I'm sitting here today with Mike Kennelly of Royal LePage Signature. Now, I would tell you all his titles, but I'm going to allow him to disclose all his titles because it's a long list of accolades. That if he had an army, patch for all these accolades, it would probably fill his jacket. So, Mike, do you mind just letting the viewer know again who you are and obviously what you do?
Well, you're all too kind with all those medals I guess I'm wearing, but I guess the job that I get paid for would be the Vice President of Royal LePage Signature. I'm the broker manager for the West operations. So we have 3 locations in the GTA. We have one in Don Mills, we have one in downtown, and we have one in Mississauga, Eglinton and Highway 10. So we have just over 600 realtors that myself and another broker are responsible for managing the team that oversees that, deal administrators, MLS departments, things like that. So that's my professional gig. But on the side, I've volunteered for organized real estate, and I'm currently the president-elect for the Mississauga Real Estate Board. Next year, I'll take on the role as president. And so that's been a 4-year commitment to me. 4 years ago, I joined the board with the intention of helping the industry better itself, to elevate the conditions within the industry, the integrity ethics of the realtors, and to help with lobbying with the government, or getting our message out to help the consumer better have a better experience. In the board, I'm the chair of professional standards, so I oversee the entire bylaws of the organization to make sure if there's a realtor that's gone offside, I'm the guy, and my team.
You mean that happens?
It does happen.
Realtors go offside?
It does. We are a snapshot of the general community, of course, right? So it does happen. The good thing is we're vigilant about it, and we're on top of things immediately. I also chair the arbitration committee. Those are typically internal disputes between members, brokerage to brokerage, and typically involve commission disputes. And then I'm the chair of government relations, where I go out and meet with the local politicians, both at a municipal level, provincial level, and federal level. In fact, I fly out in a couple of days to Ottawa, where we'll be giving and conveying the message of realtors to the federal politicians. So we'll meet with our local members of parliament, allow them to understand where we're coming from, so that we can help elevate and eliminate this crisis that we have right now in housing, where we don't have enough supply, enough inventory for the demand that we currently have. So those are my accolades, I suppose. It's my, and I will say too, I was a realtor. This is my 30th year.
I was going to ask, so how long have you been in real estate?
Yeah, so I actually did my courses in 1992 and then entered into selling full-time in 1994. So 30 years in the business, 28 as a full-time realtor. I left and transitioned from selling at the end of 2006, December, and became a full-time broker in January 2007. So that's been, what I've professionally been involved with.
So modestly speaking, you're saying you're a bit of a big shot, eh?
No, I'm not a big shot. I like to just be the average guy to help people. I built my real estate business on volunteerism in the local community that I grew up in. And I volunteered back in the sport community, hockey, baseball, inline. And so I look at what I do now as a broker coach to the realtors like yourself and your team and others. I'm able to, share with them the experiences I had as a realtor, the value adds that I bring, or all the courses I took, the database I created, the clients I had. So, I get to do all these kind of cool things as a broker. As a coach, basically, that's how I look at myself.
Because you mentioned you came into 1992.
Yep.
What was that like in 1992? I mean, kind of set up the stage. I mean, a lot of the people that are seeing this probably either weren't born yet or were very young, like myself. Not to age you.
Yeah.
But kind of set the stage. So you came into in 92. Sorry, you got your license in 92, and then.
Yeah, so I started my courses with the Ontario Real Estate Association in 92, and so I completed those, but I was still in university at the time, so I wasn't selling full-time. When I joined the at the time, Toronto Real Estate Board in 1994, then I began my full-time career as a realtor. So the environment at that point, to give you context, interest rates at that point in time were probably running 12, 13% to get a mortgage. You know, people today are excited about these rates that we're having at 5 or 6, and they're concerned. But you know, I entered into the business when it was twice that much, and of course, the values of the properties were
a
not
lot
where they
less.
were, right?
Like
they were less. But the cost to carry that mortgage was significantly higher. And back in those days, you know, there was fewer transactions. We didn't have the population that we've now, you know, experienced the last 25 years. The growth, the migration to the city, the immigration to the city, the jobs that are here. So everybody's coming to the GTA. It's a first choice in Canada, right? Somebody comes here, they want to come to the GTA.
We talk a lot about that. How, you know, we live in I think one of the best cities in the world, and you know, in real estate, and then obviously there's still a shortage of supply, like you mentioned earlier, and there's still a lot of people coming to the GTA. At that time, when you joined in '94, do you remember how many realtors were actually licensed at that time?
It's a good question. I would have to think less than 20,000 would be my guess.
Less than 20,000. So
yeah.
Since then till now, obviously you've seen a big shift in the...
It's tripled, if not quadrupled. I could even be a little high on saying just under 20. It could have been 14 or 15. I do know when the 89-90 correction occurred, there was a en masse exodus of realtors out of the business. Just don't know the exact numbers because I wasn't there. As I entered into the business, though, there was still the hangover effect from all of those, you know, corrections that were occurring, both in the housing market itself, the values, but also in the realtor population there. I found there was a lot of negativity in the business. In fact, when I went into real estate, a lot of my friends, my peers that I grew up with, thought I was crazy getting into an industry that had just gone through so much pain and suffering. And I thought, what a great opportunity. You know, this is the time you want to go. You know, it's kind of
when everybody's running the other way.
Yeah. It's kind of like the firemen. You know, they're wired differently. There's a fire, they run to the fire, right? And so for me, I saw a great opportunity in these changing markets, because then, no matter what anybody says, evolution and change in our industry is constant. There is never, you know, the sameness in real estate. You're going to evolve, change all the time, right? And that's exciting too, right? I mean, you get to kind of ride that wave. The wave goes up, the wave goes down, and sometimes there is no wave. It's flat.
It's just how you handle those turbulent moments, right?
Yeah,
so, but okay, so you talked about how the realtors were feeling. What was the, I guess, what was the feeling amongst the public? Because you said, you know, you had, obviously the price, we get it. The price wasn't as high. Interest rates were, but what was how were they feeling about the market?
Yeah.
Well, what kind of feedback were you getting from people that you were working with?
Yeah, so if you look back then, it would have been a traditional buyer's market environment, less so for sellers to sell. The sales cycle was much longer. You would be showing 30, 40, 50 homes to a buyer before they purchased. Sellers were, at that point when I started, they were experiencing more of a flattening and bottoming experience, kind of what we're experiencing right now. It's October 2022. The markets have done some significant corrections. I don't have the crystal ball to tell you where it's going, but it seems that we found a stabilized foundation right now in the last couple months. Since July of this year, we've, if you want to say it, we've hit the bottom, according to what the market's looking like.
Right.
But you know, back then, buyers had much more flexibility and time and choice, and we would go back and look at a house 3-4 times. We'd have those inspections. And so when they were buying with complete peace of mind. What we just went through, you know, as elevated as the markets were, as agitated they were, people didn't have that time to pause, reflect, and make those decisions on what they were doing. You know, and it's a big decision, right? We're selling, we're managing the large single investment of a human being's life, traditionally here in Toronto, right?
It's probably the largest asset somebody's going to buy, right?
Yeah.
And then you obviously, do you remember what the average price was in 1994?
So I was selling in the Brampton market. I would say for a detached 2,000 square foot home, probably 160 to 170.
160. So
yeah, that's detached, you know, kind of 35, 40 foot frontage by maybe 100, 110 depth. Yeah, it would have been 160, 170. My first real sale was one of those types of properties, and it was $167,500.
So you've seen, I mean, obviously, like you said, there's different cycles, but you've seen the low of the market where, again, we were, I think in the 90s, it was early 90s to 97 was what they consider like a recession.
Yeah.
So the real estate market was in a bit, and then it bottomed out kind of around the time that you entered. Yeah. So you have experience with this. So if you're a consumer in this type of market, what would you say to them? What would you advise?
Meet with a realtor like you, first and foremost, because no matter what, real estate's a personal decision, whether you're buying or selling, right? So there's no generic answer that I would be able to give to anybody to say, here's your solution. You really need to sit down and we have to analyze a number of things. Like what's your time horizon on either purchasing a property? Are you thinking of buying and holding for 10, 15, 20 years or forever? Or are you thinking of buying as an investor and turning that property, maybe you're doing a reno and selling it within 6 months to a year. So there's very specific conversations that have to happen with the realtor, right? And the realtor that sits and listens to that client, helps that client formulate a plan to go forward. The most important thing, though, that I would say, as a buyer of real estate right now, because this is the part right now where buyers are being a little bit indecisive maybe,
because they're trying to time the market, right?
Yeah, and so I'll give you an old saying, you've probably heard it, right? It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So what that means essentially is nobody can predict that. If I was able to predict when the market's going to bottom out and get ready for its next leg up, I wouldn't be selling real estate. I wouldn't be a broker vice president of LePage. I'd have my own show in Vegas about predicting things, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody can do that, right? But what you can do is set yourself up for the best possible outcome. So if my time horizon for buying real estate and holding real estate is 10, 15, 20 years, it doesn't matter what happens in micro moments of time. So the fluctuation up, down, or the stabilized market, it doesn't matter because the time compresses that. Over time, real estate has anywhere between a 5 to 6% appreciation, and that's the last century of looking at statistics in Canada, right? So if you look at all the market ups, all the market downs, it's a stabilized 5 or 6% return. So if you're in the house for 10 years, a 5% return is 50%. Not bad. While you're getting that top end, return, you're also paying down the debt that you've owed on the house. And at the current rates of interest, no need to panic at 5% or 5.5%.
It's not that bad.
It's still fantastic rates. I keep a tool in the back of my office in one of my credenzas, and it's my book that I had in 1992, the mortgage financing book. And that book we had to calculate rates by hand. We didn't have the calculators to do that, computer programs. It was, here's the rates, and you had to do the mathematics on that. Well, that book, it starts at 8%, right? It doesn't have any rate below 8% and a rate as high as 25%. Now, for those of you that are older than me, early 80s, we got rates up to 20, 21%, right? It was real high interest rates. But what I'm trying to say or can kind of convey here is that at 8%, the book starts there. That's a normalized kind of interest rate. Again, if you look the last 100 years in Canada, 8% is a good rate. When you factor in, there's times where it's been 14, 15, as high as 20, 21%. I remember actually in that class, it was a class of mortgage financing, and I was 22 years old, didn't know anything, didn't own my own house. I put up my hand to the professor guy, the teacher, and said, how come the book only goes to 8%? Like, why wouldn't it have 7, 6, or 5? And they looked at me, he laughed, the whole class laughed at me because they were all, adults in the class. And, the teacher looks at some of the other classmates of mine and says, well, teach that naive young kid, the lesson, like it's never gonna go below 8%. It was a de facto statement, we'll never see rates below 8%. But look at what we just went through.
I think we got spoiled.
We got spoiled.
I think a lot of people got spoiled. Like I'm starting to see, and not to cut you off, but like I'm starting to see, the effects of that, because like you said, 8% was normal. Anything below that was almost like a joke. Yeah. And free money, right? And so I think with the pandemic and everything that happened afterwards, people got spoiled. And a lot of people thought, well, okay, well, if my variable rate was this and that's the payment, and it came down, rather than keeping that payment, they adjusted the payment downwards.
Right.
And I think, actually not I think, I know people now with it going back up, they're feeling it in the wallets.
For sure.
Like big time. Because, I mean, also realistically speaking, like you said, 8 was the norm before, but we also have to be mindful that I think where we had it at before, where the Canada rate was a quarter, 0.25, like that's also very low. We had to, I think there had to be some thought process to say, well, what goes up must come down,
100%.
and what's come down is eventually, I mean, it's going to have to come up. That was just, I guess, fueled by the pandemic, right?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people didn't have the context to understand like what a regular, healthy interest rate market looks like. And when you had a quarter-point Bank Canada rate, I mean, that's to me free money. That is jump all over that opportunity. And there's many schools of thoughts on how you should manage your debt payments for your mortgage. I happen to be more of a conservative in that respect, in that I want to pay down debt. I don't want to be taking on a lot of debt, especially in the low interest environment rates, because it just, for me, I know that rates will bounce back up, and they have, right? I mean, they've done it in a quick way that's probably shocked a lot of people. Again, it's another reason why people should meet with people like you as realtors to sit down and kind of break that down. What does it look like? What does my specific situation look like? We're not, it's not like going onto Google and diagnosing yourself on WebMD, like, oh, I got these symptoms. Oh, geez, I've got this terrible disease. No, go see your professional. Let your professional give you some tests and come up with a decision, and you can plan an outcome that's going to be specific to you. Too many people want to buy into these average things that you read in the newspapers and the TVs, and it just doesn't work. It's a specific decision. Real estate's a local decision too. Like we'll say averages about here's the average in Toronto, here's the average in Mississauga, but that doesn't mean anything to the buyer. If the buyer's specifically buying one community, one maybe high-end neighborhood or a brand new building, we have these pre-construction launches where they're in these exciting new areas, these brownstone community areas that are now being reclaimed and turned into new gentrified areas, right? So if you're looking to buy there, why are you concerned about what's happening in Scarborough or Markham when you're buying in Port Credit in Mississauga, right?
Or Calgary, because I mean, we're slow here, but Calgary's getting a boom right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, even within a country, from one end to the next, it could really change as well, right?
Oh yeah.
So I guess it's where you're looking at investing, and again, what is and I agree with you because I'm of the same sentiment. If I'm going to get my kitchen done, if I'm going to get something like renovation, I want to go to the guy who's got a good track record, who has good reviews, a guy who I know I can trust his professionalism. I think the same is with real estate, because you want to make sure that person's asking questions.
Right.
It's not just, hey, you want to buy real estate? Here, buy this, buy that, buy that, etc. Because from what I've spoken with people lately, and a lot of people were sold on, hey, listen, we can make you quick money.
Yeah. Right?
And now with the market changing the way it did, it's no longer the quick money.
No.
Now it's like you said, it's ask, hey, are you planning on staying here 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year? Are you looking at flipping it? What is and I think that in our industry, I mean, that lack of care, would you say care? Would you say advice?
It's coaching a client to the finish line, right? And sometimes a client doesn't even know what they need, right? Or that's the job of a professional realtor, is to help expose those kind of blind spots that they may have about the market. And the worst thing a buyer could do, or a seller, quite frankly, is making an impulse decision in real estate. Trading in real estate, it's our business, of course, but it's a very costly affair to get in and out of real estate, right? So when you make that decision to commit to buying something or committing to selling your property, you should have done some massive due diligence on that front. No impulse buying in real estate, as far as I'm concerned.
Now, just to kind of wrap things up here. So at the beginning, you told us, your titles, your accolades that you have, and the memberships and stuff like that, and basically the boards that you lead. How does that benefit the consumer?
Well, one of the missions that I kind of agreed to take on was to help elevate the professional status of realtors. To me, because I'm part of this body of over 90,000 realtors, I believe, in Ontario, 130 maybe in Canada, I'm one of those people. And for me, it's the rising tide analogy. I want everybody to be elevated to the highest standard. I don't want anybody to have any stereotypes about realtors. You can put us down and not trust us and things like that. And I think, it's the complete opposite. The vast majority of us are professionals. We build communities. Like, we're the ones that are sponsoring baseball teams, hockey teams, doing charity picnics, handing out this month probably lots of pumpkins in neighborhoods, right? Doing skating events, doing charity events. Like, we are, important industry. And for me, just keeping that pressure on to say, we need better standards, we need higher ethics and integrity in the business, we strengthen the laws that we currently have, and use those laws so that when there is a bad actor perhaps in the business, that that person is dealt with to the fullest extent that we're able to. But also, I look at myself as being a facilitator too for the consumer, right? So the consumer has challenges that they're facing right now. The affordability crisis in Canada, the supply crisis in Canada. These are conversations that people like me are bringing forward to our municipal level government people, or provincial, federal. And it's important we do that because they're not experts in our field, right? They're generalists doing what they can. And most of them are there with the greatest of intentions, regardless of their political affiliation. And so for us, it's to go there to, check blind spots for them. Hey, were you aware of this possibly derailing, new development, the NIMBY kind of mindset that some communities have, where you can take these areas, which are, in our area in Mississauga, we've seen a lot of this reclaimed land that is being converted into what will become like state-of-the-art, beautiful locations. People will want to go there. It's a destination point. So it's all that stuff is to help the consumer be able to better navigate the landscape with a professional like yourself.
Do you think the government will be getting rid of the stress test? Do you think that would help?
I don't think they'll get rid of the stress test. They probably will modify the stress test. The other thing too is, we've had massive inflation, right? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's crazy. And we have some ceilings and floors in place right now. One is for CMHC, right? CMHC caps out at $1 million. Well, the average sale price in the GTA is over $1 million. So that eliminates the CMHC first-time home buyer insurance on a property. So I could see that being something looked at by government, getting a formula in place where it allow more people the ability to afford the property. They may tweak again the amortization rates. I'm not a big fan of that. But it is another way to help with that, stretching that affordability curve out for people. Right now, the AMs, of course, top end is 25-year AMs, right? But we've seen in the past they get up to 30.
When I bought my first place, it was 40 years.
There you go, right?
So you get some.
Yeah, so you'll see some probably appetite to be creative, and in these times, there's probably some creative ideas that are out there that if we can tap into them, it would be great. I mean, the crisis is not just here in Toronto. We happen to be the magnifier of it for the country, but this is occurring across the country in many, many urban areas.
Well, Mike, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. They often say, if you can't change the world, at least be the change.
Sure.
Right? And it sounds from what you told us and what you shared that you're advocating for the consumer by elevating the professionalism. I, for one, I appreciate that because obviously these are my colleagues, these are my counterparts. So really appreciate what you're doing for the community, for us realtors, and especially how you're improving the professionalism for the public. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. Yep. I know you got a trip to plan. So really, really want to thank you for that. And I'm sure that our viewers, got a lot out of this. And, he's been through this before, so he didn't panic. So just don't panic. I think if we can go through this, you'll on the other end, you'll be fine.
That's actually wonderful advice to finish that off. Don't panic. Tomorrow will appear. There's an old saying, this too shall pass, right? So no matter what's happening, good, bad, indifferent, it passes, right? It passes with time. And we've already seen a massive change that's occurred in the last 6 months. Could there be more in store? Absolutely. But here's what I learned in my first week of real estate selling full time. People buy and sell whether the market's up, down, or sideways. They always need to purchase real estate. It's one of the basic necessities on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Housing, right? Shelter. So don't panic. Great advice.
Mike,
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.